have Piedmont there, right? Who's coming to present? Luisa or Carla? Both of you. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luisa Donato. I'm working with Carla Nanni, and we are responsible for the Education and Vocation Observatory of the Piedmont region. The purpose of today's presentation is to share the results of a study from Piedmont on education and vocational training system, on guidance, and on the school-to-work transition, viewed through a comparative perspective. This approach provides new insight and raises new questions. To guide you through our reflection, we start with the definition of the indicator that frames the various concepts of dropout. After that, we will look at the availability of the sources we are working with and show you the trend in participation in the education and training system. Then we will focus on indicator of explicit and implicit dropout, as well as the regional guidance system, commenting on the result of our analysis regarding the school-to-work transition of young people in Piedmont. Finally, to address the question raised from our data analysis, we propose some steps to help achieve a better understanding of the education and training system. Let's start with the indicator of school performance. The first group means explicit dropout, synonymous with failures and school dropout. The indicators of rating school failure include failures, repeaters, and average students. On the other hand, indicators that capture school dropout include frequency of interruption and early leaver from education and training system. The second group addresses implicit dropout, monitoring the qualitative aspect of the phenomenon, specifically the percentage of students who manage to complete their programs but with learning levels that are not adequate for the qualification obtained. Now, let's move on the data sources we are working with.
Good afternoon. To start with the national and international sources, and we use in our work Eurostat, ISTAT, INVALSI, and Ministry of Education that allow us to compare Piedmont with other regions. The Ministry of the Education, we use open data and other data provided by the Statistics Office. The Ministry of Education doesn't provide individual student data, and this represents a limitation for our analysis of participation and dropout. But very useful for our analysis are three sources of the Piedmont region. The first, Damasco database dataset, includes data on schools collected since 1980 at the school level. The second, Monviso dataset, collects administrative information on training courses, includes on education and vocational training courses, IEFP. These courses are part of the second cycle of education and provide a qualification or diploma under regional authority. The data are collected at individual level. And finally, the SERSE dataset collects information on participant in guidance activities, and here too the data are collected at the individual level. Now let's look at the integrated use of sources to observe youth participation in education. The chart shows the trend of the schooling rate in Piedmont in the second cycle over the last 30 years and the contribution of IEFP courses. This is the gross enrollment rate, which includes all students enrolled in daytime courses regardless of age and weighted on population in the age group 14-18. The upper secondary school enrollment rate, the dotted line, grew and reached 90% at the beginning of this century, after remained below that level. However, since the introduction of IFP courses in 2003, the overall enrollment rate of second cycle, the solid line, has continued to grow, approaching full participation in recent years. Now let's look at another type of enrollment rate, the one specific to age. We can see participation at specific ages, regardless of where students are enrolled. The chart shows the enrollment rate of 16 years old, in total 97% in the school year 2022-2023. As one might expect, most 16 years old attend upper secondary school. Instead, a very few are overage in lower secondary school. And finally, more than 10% of students attend IEFP courses in training agency. The overall rate for 60 years old males in total is only slightly lower than that of female, but the difference lies in attendance in IEFP courses, 12% for males, 8% for females. As can seen from the data, in Piedmont, the IEFP courses provide significant support for the education of young people, particularly those most at risk of dropping out. Among these, the support is greater for male students and foreign students. School enrollment rates have increased and are at a good level, but what do the explicit school performance indicators tell us? Let's begin allora with the European target indicator on early leavers from education and training. It expresses the share of individuals aged 18-24 who have completed no more than lower secondary education and are not engaged in further education or training. The indicator has decreased in Piedmont over time, and in 2023 is 8.8%. Therefore, Piedmont has already reached the European target 2030, less than 9%. This places us among the best performing Italian region, and this is a positive result. For the other indicators of school failure rate, here we propose an overview to account that we monitor each year in our work. Point 1, we observe that these indicators show improvement over time. The chart on the left shows the trend in decline of repeaters since 1990s. Point 2, as is well known, the indicator gets worse as students advance through the education level. The chart on the right shows the rate of failure in primary school, in lower secondary school, in upper secondary school. Point 3, the gender difference remains, with females continuing to outperform males. An example is the share of overage students in lower secondary school. Point 4, school failure rates are higher in vocational institute compared to technical institute and lower in high schools. Point 5, failure rates are higher for foreign students, and among these there are higher for the first generation student than the second generation. The slide shows the dropout rates calculated by the Ministry of Education for upper secondary school. Lastly, failure rates are higher among students from low socioeconomic background, and this will be illustrated with the INVALSI indicator on the next slide by my colleague.
Now I'd like to move on to the qualitative aspect of dropout, identified with the distribution of results in the learning level of the INVALSI survey. In 2023, at the end of lower secondary education, the results show that in Piedmont, the percentage of students who do not reach basic level in Italian and mathematics, respectively, was 36 and 40%. However, these low levels are not equally distributed among young people in Piedmont. Analysis show the immigrant background of students is closely linked to the learning levels achieved. Second-generation students, who seem to cope better post-pandemic, account for over 60% of low student performers. First-generation students are the most vulnerable, with almost all failing to reach adequate learning levels. However, a student immigrant background, identified by INVALSI as a significant factor affecting outcomes, is just one of the elements contributing to learning gaps. In fact, these characteristics often reflect the socioeconomic fragility of the family, which are the greatest impact on differences in learning outcomes. Families that were able to provide resources, connection, and study support during the interruption of in-person schooling due to health emergency managed to mitigate the shock. In contrast, more vulnerable families with limited economic and social resources struggled to support their children's learning. And this situation was more common in Piedmont than in the Northwest macro area and the rest of Italy, and therefore addressing these gaps became a priority even in the first cycle of Piedmontese school. Now I'd like to move on to the result at the end of upper secondary education, and we observe a steady increase in the proportion of low performers. Furthermore, it is of note that even at the end of upper secondary school, a low family socioeconomic background negatively impacts learning outcomes, although to a lesser extent than at the end of low secondary education. The type of secondary school makes a difference. Young people attending vocational schools show the most problematic learning outcomes. There is a specific target to focus on, with learning activities, as well as support through guidance in the first 2 years of upper secondary education, in order to minimize the chances of obtaining a qualification with low levels of learning. Finally, the average results from 5th grade of primary school to the last year of secondary school show that being regular in the educational path start to make a difference already at the end of low secondary education and continue to wait in both entry and at the end of upper secondary education. And this highlights the importance of guidance during the transition between school levels. What does this data tell us about implicit dropout? Firstly, differences in outcome widen throughout the educational pathway and are shaped by student characteristics. Secondly, grade repetition negatively impacts student outcomes. These gaps should be reduced by addressing implicit dropout, which often precedes explicit dropout. If so, how can this be achieved? In Piedmont, there is a regional guidance system that coordinates and implements guidance activities. The system follows a 3-year program and is funded by European Social Fund. The action promotes activity aimed at contrasting school dropout for young people aged between 11 and 22, their families and guidance practitioners. The aim of the system includes supporting transition, contrasting early leavers, promoting access to education, early career learning, and knowledge of the labor market. The activities include individual action at school and community service points, and group action in schools, with the aim of helping young people to continue their studies and to support the transition between systems. Information is collected in the SERCE database, which has recently been implemented. And during the years 2022-2023, the system involved 94,200 people across more than 11,000 activities. Observing the trend in the coverage of resident population in Piedmont, we see that in the 11-15 age group, 35% of Piedmont youth were involved in guidance activity provided by the system. And among 13 years old, 77 with 30,300 young people reached. At the same time, the trend in the indicator rates to need young people who are not in work, study or training in Piedmont show a significant decline starting from 2021. This decline affects everyone, particularly young women. But what's happened in these years? What is clear is that we cannot establish a causal relationship based on our analysis. And this is why we are interested in integrated data to better understand what is happening. For example, could part of this improvement be related to the trend in the school-to-work transition of young people in Piedmont? On the labor market side, during the same period, our analysis show an increase in the employment rate based on educational qualifications starting from 2021. From this data, we understand that part of the declining need may indeed be linked to the trend in the youth labor market. However, if the education and training system, as well as the guidance system, also contributed to this, we don't know. So, what all these data tell us? They suggest that to contrast dropout is necessary support participation in education and training system, reduce learning gaps, and support young people in obtaining their qualification. And through each step can goal is achieved. Our proposal is structured in 3 areas. The first area identified the need to connect different sources. First and foremost, because we are working with database created for administrative purpose, which we are using for statistical purpose. We believe it's useful to employ variables that allow to merging of the sources. The second area focuses on sharing sources, particularly to individual data via an exchange between the central and local level and vice versa. Oh, sorry. Okay. The last area, aim at building databases that allow for tracking individuals in their education and training and guidance path. It is to enable the use of that advanced analytical model that help verify whether and how we are proceeding toward the aim to better understand the education and training system in order to reduce dropout. Thank you for your attention.